My wife claimed the herbal tonic was an ancient remedy to cure my fading memory, but the only thing it was designed to erase was my life. I thought I was losing my mind, but a hidden paternity test and a private investigator proved I wasn't going crazy. I was being hunted by the two people I loved most in the world. If you enjoy stories about justice served cold, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. Let me know if you would have waited for the police or handled things exactly the way I did. My name is Anthony. I am 62 years old, and until recently, I thought I was the luckiest man in Seattle. When you spend 40 years in the logistics industry, you learn that everything comes down to timing. You learn that a single delay, a single overlooked detail in the supply chain, can bring a billion-dollar empire crashing down. I built my company, Pacific Zenith, on the principles of precision and trust. I knew every route, every driver, and every warehouse manager. I was a man who prided himself on seeing around corners, on anticipating problems before they became disasters. That is why the betrayal, when it finally revealed itself, was so devastating. I had spent my life watching the horizon, but I never thought to look inside my own home. I retired 2 years ago. It was supposed to be the golden era of my life. I had sold the majority stake in my company, retaining only a chairman position, and handed the daily operations over to the next generation. I had a beautiful estate in the highlands overlooking the Puget Sound, where the gray water met the gray sky in a way that used to bring me peace. And most importantly, I had Elena. Elena was 38 years old, a woman of such vibrancy and elegance that she seemed to bring color into a room just by walking through the door. We met at a charity auction for marine conservation 3 years ago. I had been a widower for a decade, resigned to a life of solitary golf games and business dinners. Elena changed that. She was interested in me, not just my portfolio. She listened when I talked about the early days of trucking routes. She laughed at my dry jokes. She made me feel 40 again. My daughter Sarah was the only one who hesitated. Sarah is 35, sharp-witted, and protective. She runs the charitable foundation I started, and she has always had a good radar for people. When I first introduced her to Elena, Sarah was polite, but I saw the suspicion in her eyes. She thought Elena was too young, too perfect, too interested. I dismissed it as jealousy. I told myself that Sarah just didn't want to see her father replaced. To bridge the gap between my new wife and my daughter, I leaned heavily on my son-in-law, Marcus. Marcus was Sarah's husband, a man I had treated like the son I never had. I hired him straight out of business school 10 years ago. I mentored him. I taught him how to negotiate with unions, how to read a balance sheet, and how to look a man in the eye and gauge his honesty. Marcus was ambitious, charming, and eager to please. When I announced my retirement, there was no question in my mind that Marcus would take over as CEO. He was family. He was the bridge. For the first year of our marriage, life was idyllic. Elena and I traveled to Italy and Japan. We hosted dinner parties. Marcus settled into the CEO role at Pacific Zenith, and profits were up. Sarah seemed to soften toward Elena, and we finally looked like one big, happy, blended family. Then the fog rolled in. It didn't happen all at once. It started with the headaches, a dull, rhythmic throb behind my eyes that greeted me every morning. Then came the fatigue. I, a man who used to wake up at 5 a.m. without an alarm to run 5 miles, suddenly found myself struggling to get out of bed before noon. My limbs felt heavy, like they were filled with wet sand. But the worst part was the mind. I started forgetting things. Small things at first. I would walk into a room and forget why I was there. I would lose my glasses, only to find them in the refrigerator. I would be in the middle of a sentence and the words would just vanish, leaving me grasping at air while Elena looked at me with pity. Elena was a saint during this time. Or at least, she played the part of one perfectly. She took charge of my health with a militant dedication. She scheduled appointments with the best neurologists in the state. She sat beside me in the sterile examination rooms, holding my hand while I failed cognitive tests. "He is under so much stress, doctor," she would say, her voice trembling with concern. "He gets confused about what day it is. Last week he forgot our anniversary." I hadn't forgotten our anniversary. I was sure of it. But when she said it with such conviction, and when I looked at the calendar and saw the date circled in red, I started to doubt myself. Maybe I had forgotten. Maybe my mind was rotting away. The doctors couldn't find a tumor or a stroke. They used words like early onset cognitive decline and idiopathic neurological degeneration. They prescribed rest and reduced stress. That was when Elena introduced the tonic. "It's an herbal blend, Anthony," she told me one morning, setting a glass of thick, green sludge on the kitchen island. "My grandmother used to make it. It has ginkgo, turmeric, and specialized herbs for memory retention. Please, drink it. For me." It tasted bitter, earthy, and foul. But I looked at her hopeful, tear-filled eyes, and I drank it down. Every morning she would prepare it fresh. She called it her labor of love. Within an hour of drinking it, my heart would race. I would feel a wave of nausea so potent it left me breathless. I told her about the side effects, but she shushed me, placing a cool hand on my forehead. "It's the toxins leaving your body, my love," she would coo. "It means it's working. You have to get worse before you get better." I believed her. I was a man who knew logistics, not medicine. I trusted my wife. I trusted that she wanted to keep me around. The turning point, the moment the universe decided to snap me out of my stupor, came on a rainy Tuesday in November. I was having a good day. I hadn't finished my smoothie that morning because I had spilled half of it on the floor by accident. A moment of clumsiness that Elena had sighed at before cleaning up. Because I hadn't consumed the full dose, my head was clearer than it had been in months. I was sitting in the master bedroom reading a biography of Churchill, trying to exercise my brain. Elena was in the shower. The sound of the water running was a soothing white noise. Her phone was sitting on the nightstand next to me. Usually, I am a man who respects privacy. I never checked her phone. I never asked for her passwords. Trust was the bedrock of our relationship. But that afternoon, I was expecting a call from my estate lawyer, Mr. Henderson. Elena had been gently, but persistently, urging me to update my will. She said that given my declining health, we needed to make sure everything was simple for me. She wanted power of attorney. She wanted to be the executor. When the phone buzzed against the mahogany wood, I instinctively glanced over, thinking it was Henderson calling me on her line, as he sometimes did if I didn't answer mine. It wasn't a call. It was a push notification from a secure medical portal. The preview text was visible on the lock screen. "Prenatal DNA results available. Your report is ready for download." I froze. The book in my lap felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Prenatal. Elena was pregnant. She hadn't told me. A complex mix of emotions hit me like a physical blow. My first instinct was a surge of joy. A baby? At my age? It seemed impossible, miraculous even. We hadn't been intimate in nearly 5 months because of my condition. My libido had vanished along with my energy, but if we hadn't been intimate in 5 months. The joy evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp dread. I looked at the bathroom door. The shower was still running. I could hear her humming a tune. It was a happy tune. I reached for the phone. My hand was trembling, but not from the illness this time. It was trembling from adrenaline. I knew her passcode. She used her birthday. 0412. I typed it in. The phone unlocked. I tapped the notification. It opened the medical app. I had to scroll past a few appointments to get to the document. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack the bone. I opened the PDF file. It was a standard lab report, filled with medical jargon and numbers. I scanned the page, my eyes frantically searching for the bottom line. There it was. Paternity probability for Anthony J. Blackwell, 0.00%. I felt the air leave my lungs. I closed my eyes for a second, hoping that when I opened them, the numbers would change. They didn't. 0%. I wasn't the father. My eyes moved down to the next line. Biological father match, positive. Donor, name, M. Sterling. The world stopped spinning. The sound of the rain against the window faded into silence. The only thing I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. M. Sterling. There was only one M. Sterling in our lives. Marcus Sterling. My son-in-law. My protege. The husband of my daughter, Sarah. I stared at the name, unable to comprehend the magnitude of what I was seeing. It wasn't just adultery. It was incestuous, cannibalistic betrayal. My wife was sleeping with my daughter's husband. I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with the green tonic. I wanted to throw the phone against the wall. I wanted to kick down the bathroom door and drag Elena out by her wet hair. I wanted to drive to the office and strangle Marcus with my bare hands. But I didn't do any of those things. I am a logistics man. When a route is compromised, you don't drive the truck off a cliff. You assess the damage. You check the cargo. You find a new path. I took a deep breath, forcing the rage down into a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I took my own phone out of my pocket and snapped 3 photos of the screen, capturing every detail of the report. Then I closed the app on her phone. I wiped the screen on my shirt to remove my fingerprints. I placed it back on the nightstand exactly at the angle it had been sitting before. I stood up. My legs were steady. For the first time in 6 months, my mind was razor sharp. The confusion was gone. The fog had lifted, burned away by the heat of the truth. I walked out of the bedroom and went downstairs to my study. I locked the door. I sat behind my desk, the desk where I had built an empire, and I stared at the wall. The betrayal was absolute. They weren't just cheating. They were mocking me. They were waiting for me to die. And that's when the second realization hit me. My illness. The sudden onset. The doctors finding nothing. The tonic that Elena insisted I drink every single day. The nausea. The heart palpitations. I wasn't sick. I was being poisoned. The thought was so horrifying I almost vomited right there on the Persian rug. The woman I slept next to, the woman who whispered that she loved me, was feeding me death in a crystal glass. And Marcus? He had to know. You don't have an affair with the wife of a dying man and not know why he is dying. They were culling me. They were clearing the board. With me gone, Marcus would fully control the company. Elena would inherit the estate and my liquid assets. They would get rid of me, push Sarah aside, and live like kings on the grave of the man who gave them everything. I looked at the family portrait on my desk. Sarah, Marcus, Elena, and me, all smiling at the last Christmas party. Sarah looked so happy. She loved Marcus. She trusted him just as I had. If I confronted them now, they would deny it. They would say the test was a mistake. They would say I was confused, that my dementia was making me paranoid. Elena would pour the rest of the poison down the sink and play the victim. Without proof of the poisoning, I was just a jealous, senile old man. I needed more than a screenshot. I needed a smoking gun. I picked up my landline. I didn't trust my cell phone anymore. Who knew if Marcus had put spyware on it? He ran the company's IT infrastructure after all. I dialed a number I hadn't used in 20 years. It belonged to a man named Vance. Vance was a cleaner, not the kind who mops floors, and not a hitman, but a private investigator who operated in the gray zones of corporate warfare. I had used him decades ago to uncover a competitor who was bribing my union reps. Vance was expensive, abrasive, and utterly discreet. "Vance," I said when he answered on the second ring. His voice sounded like gravel in a blender. "Anthony Blackwell," he said. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask why I was calling. "It's been a long time. I heard you retired." "I did," I said, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. Cold, detached. "I need to come out of retirement for one last job. But this isn't corporate, Vance. It's domestic." "I don't do cheating spouses, Anthony. You know that. Hire a mall cop." "It's not just cheating," I whispered, glancing at the study door to make sure it was still locked. "It's murder. Mine." There was a silence on the other end of the line. "Meet me in an hour," Vance said. "The diner on 4th and Pike, the back booth. Don't bring your car. Take a cab." "I can't," I said. "I'm supposed to be an invalid. I can't just walk out." "Then you better start acting," Vance said. "Because if you're right, you're on borrowed time." I hung up the phone. I could hear the shower turn off upstairs. I could hear Elena's footsteps moving around the bedroom. I needed a cover story. I went to the liquor cabinet and poured a small amount of scotch into a glass, then swirled it around and dumped it in the sink, leaving just the smell. I splashed some water on my face to look clammy. When Elena came downstairs 10 minutes later, wrapped in a silk robe, glowing with the radiance of a pregnant woman who thinks she has gotten away with the perfect crime, I was slumped in my armchair, looking dazed. "Anthony?" she asked, her voice dripping with that fake, sugary concern. "Are you okay?" I need to get away," I stammered, making my hands shake intentionally. "The house, it feels like a prison. The walls are closing in." She frowned. "What do you mean, darling?" "I called Jim and the boys," I lied. Jim was an old fishing buddy I hadn't seen in months. "They are going up to the cabin at the lake for a few days, just to sit on the dock. I think the fresh air would help me. Please, Elena, let me go. I feel like I'm dying in here." I watched her face carefully. I saw the gears turning. If I went away for a few days, she would have the house to herself. She could bring Marcus over. They could celebrate the baby. "Do you think you're well enough to go?" she asked, biting her lip. "I just need to sit by the water," I pleaded. "I'll take the medicine with me. I promise." She smiled. It was a predator's smile disguised as a loving wife's indulgence. "Okay, darling," she said, kissing my forehead. "If you think it will help. But you must promise to drink your tonic every morning. I'll pack a cooler for you." "I promise," I said. 2 hours later, a cab picked me up. Elena waved from the porch, looking relieved. I had a cooler bag on the seat next to me containing 3 mason jars of green sludge. I wasn't going to the lake. I directed the driver to a cheap motel in downtown Seattle, 3 blocks from the diner where Vance was waiting. I checked into the room. It smelled of stale smoke and lemon polish. I put the cooler on the table. I sat in that motel room for the first night staring at the ceiling, listening to the sirens wailing in the distance. I had told Elena I was going to a cabin to find peace, but I had never felt more at war. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the numbers on that paternity test. 0%. The next morning, I met Vance at the diner. He slid into the booth opposite me, looking like he had slept in his trench coat. He didn't order coffee. He just looked at the cooler bag I had placed on the table. "What is in the bag, Anthony?" he asked. "My breakfast," I said grimly, "or what my wife claims is my breakfast." I explained everything. The symptoms, the memory loss, the sudden onset of confusion that conveniently started a few months after I updated my life insurance policy. I told him about the paternity test. I told him about Marcus. Vance listened without blinking. He didn't gasp. He didn't offer sympathy. He took notes in a small black notebook. When I finished, he tapped the table with his pen. "If she is poisoning you," he said, his voice low, "she is likely using something that mimics natural causes. Arsenic is too messy. Rat poison is for amateurs. If she is smart, and she sounds smart, She is using something organic. He took the jars of green sludge. I have a contact at a private lab, Vance said. I will have a toxicology report in 48 hours. In the meantime, I need to know who she really is. You met her at an auction 3 years ago. What do you know about her life before that? I realized then how little I actually knew. She told me she was from Chicago. She told me her parents were dead. She told me she had never been married. I had never verified any of it. I was a lonely old man with a heavy wallet, and I had swallowed her story. Hook, line, and sinker. I gave Vance the keys to my spare car, a nondescript sedan I kept for emergencies, and told him to follow them. I went back to the motel and waited. Those 2 days were the longest of my life. I felt the withdrawal from the poison almost immediately. By the second afternoon, the fog in my brain had completely lifted. My hands stopped shaking. The nausea vanished. It was terrifying confirmation. My body was healing simply because I had stopped eating the food prepared by my wife. On the 3rd day, Vance came to my motel room. He didn't knock. He just scratched on the door like a stray cat. I let him in. He was holding a thick manila envelope. He threw it on the bed. "You better sit down, Anthony," he said. I sat. "Let's start with the smoothie," Vance said. He pulled out a paper with a chemical breakdown. "It is a base of kale, spinach, and apple juice. Very healthy, except for the additive. My lab guy found high concentrations of digitalis purpurea." "Foxglove," I whispered. "I knew it from my gardening days." "Exactly," Vance nodded. "In small doses it treats heart failure. In the doses she is giving you, it causes confusion, blurred vision, nausea, and eventually a massive cardiac arrhythmia. If you had kept drinking that for another month, you would have had a heart attack in your sleep. The coroner would have looked at your age and your recent medical history of decline and ruled it natural causes. No autopsy, just a grieving widow and a cremation." My blood ran cold. She wasn't just killing me, she was erasing the evidence as she went. "But that is not the worst part," Vance continued. He pulled out a series of photographs. "These were taken yesterday." I looked at the photos. They showed Marcus and Elena sitting at an outdoor cafe in Bellevue. They weren't hiding. They were holding hands. In one photo, Marcus was kissing her knuckles. In another, his hand was resting possessively on her stomach. They looked like a happy couple. They looked like they had been together for years. "They have been," Vance said. I dug into Marcus's credit card statements. He has a second card you don't know about. He has been paying for an apartment in downtown Seattle for 2 years. The lease is in his name. The occupant is listed as Elena Davis. They were together before I even met her. The realization hit me like a physical slap. It was a long con. Marcus hadn't just betrayed me, he had set me up. He must have planted her at that charity auction. He knew my type. He knew I was lonely. He likely coached her on exactly what to say to charm me. They had played me for a fool from the very first day. "Why?" I asked, my voice cracking. "I gave him the company. I gave her the world." "Why kill me?" "Because you are taking too long to die," Vance said ruthlessly. "And because of the money. I checked the company accounts, Anthony. The real ones, not the reports Marcus shows the board." He pulled out another sheet. "Pacific Zenith is hemorrhaging cash. Marcus has been siphoning millions into offshore shell companies in the Caymans. He is not a good CEO, Anthony. He is a gambler. He made some bad bets on futures markets 2 years ago and lost big. He has been stealing from the company to cover his debts, and now he is stealing to fund their escape. They need your estate to fill the hole before the auditors find out." I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was the calm of a general who finally sees the entire battlefield. The confusion was gone. The hurt was gone. All that was left was cold, hard calculation. "Who is she?" I asked. "If she isn't Elena Davis from Chicago, who is she?" Vance smiled, a grim, tight expression. "This is where it gets interesting. I ran her face through a private database. Her name isn't Elena. And she isn't from Chicago." He tossed a mugshot onto the bed. It was younger without the expensive makeup and hair dye, but it was undeniably her. Her name is Catherine Pierce. She is from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. 5 years ago, she was the prime suspect in the death of her first husband, a wealthy real estate developer twice her age. He died of a sudden heart attack. He was cremated the next day. The police couldn't prove anything because the evidence was turned to ash. But she walked away with $4 million. "She is a black widow," I said. "And Marcus is her partner in crime," Vance agreed. "They are not just lovers, Anthony. They are a professional team. And you are their retirement plan." I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the rainy street. I thought about Sarah, my daughter, the only innocent person in this entire twisted web. She was sleeping next to a monster every night. If Marcus knew I was onto them, he wouldn't hesitate to hurt her to get to me. Or worse, if he decided to run, he might empty Sarah's trust fund before he left. "I need to tell Sarah," I said. "You have to be careful," Vance warned. "She is his wife. Love makes people blind. If you go to her without absolute proof, she might tip him off. She might think you have lost your mind, just like they want everyone to believe." "I have proof," I said, pointing to the bed. "I have the tox report. I have the photos. I have the mugshot." "It might not be enough for a court yet," Vance said, "but it might be enough for her. What is your plan, Anthony? Do we call the police?" I shook my head. "No, not yet. If we call the police now, Marcus gets arrested, sure, but the lawyers will get involved. He will make bail. He will hide the money. Elena, or Catherine, might slip away. She has done it before. I want them both. I want them destroyed. I want them to lose everything they thought they were stealing from me." I looked at Vance. "The 40th anniversary gala is in 2 days. Vance raised an eyebrow. "The big party?" "It is Marcus's coronation," I said. "He organized it. The press will be there, the board of directors, the investors. He wants to announce the new direction of the company." I turned back to the bed and gathered the photos. "I am going to let him make his announcement," I said. "And then I am going to make mine." But first, I had to secure my flank. I had to save Sarah. I waited until the next morning. I knew Marcus had a standing golf game on Thursday mornings with the bank representatives, another charade to keep up appearances. I knew Sarah would be at the foundation office. I didn't call her. I walked in. When the receptionist saw me, she gasped. "Mr. Blackwell? We thought you were away." "I am back," I said. "Is my daughter in?" I walked into Sarah's office. She was on the phone looking tired. When she saw me, she dropped the receiver. "Dad?" She stood up, rushing around the desk to hug me. "Oh my God, you look better. Elena said you were at the lake, that you were having a bad episode." I held her tight. She smelled like vanilla and the same perfume her mother used to wear. I realized how much I had neglected her in my pursuit of a happy retirement with Elena. "I need you to lock the door, Sarah," I said, pulling away. "And I need you to listen to me. And no matter what I show you, I need you not to scream." She looked at my face. She saw the seriousness in my eyes, the clarity that had been missing for months. She locked the door. I laid it all out on her desk. The timeline, the paternity test, the poison, the mugshot of Catherine Pierce, the photos of her husband kissing my wife. I watched my daughter's heart break in real time. It is a terrible thing to witness. At first she denied it. She pushed the photos away. She said it was a mistake. She said Marcus would never do this. Then she saw the paternity test. She saw the date. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "We have been trying for a baby for 3 years," she whispered. He told me he had a low count. He told me it was his fault, but that we would keep trying." She looked at the photo of Elena's stomach. "He didn't have a low count with her," she said, her voice turning into a growl. The denial shattered, replaced by the Blackwell steel. Sarah wiped her face with the back of her hand. She stood up and walked to the window exactly as I had done in the motel room. When she turned back, her eyes were dry. "He has been gaslighting me," she said, "for years, making me feel like I was crazy for suspecting them, making me feel guilty for not liking her." She looked at the tox report. "They were killing you, Dad." "They were trying," I corrected. "What do we do?" she asked. "Do I kill him?" "Because I will." "No," I said. "That is too quick. We are going to do what we do best. We are going to manage the logistics of their downfall." I told her the plan for the gala. I told her exactly what she needed to do. She had to go home tonight. She had to cook dinner for Marcus. She had to ask him about his golf game. She had to smile and kiss him and pretend that her world wasn't burning down. "Can you do that?" I asked her. "Can you look him in the eye and lie?" Sarah looked at the photo of Marcus one last time. Then she looked at me. "He killed the woman I was, Dad. The woman he comes home to tonight will be an actress, and I am going to give the performance of my life." We spent the next hour coordinating with Vance. We needed audio. The photos were damning, but to truly bury them in front of the board, we needed a confession. Vance had planted listening devices in the master bedroom of my house and in Marcus's car while he was golfing. We got the recording that afternoon. It was from the car. Marcus and Elena were meeting to discuss the final phase. I sat in Vance's van with Sarah, listening to the static-filled audio coming through the receiver. "He is coming back from the lake on Saturday for the gala," Elena's voice said. "Is everything ready with the trust transfer?" "It's done," Marcus's voice replied. "I forged his signature on the transfer documents this morning. Once he kicks the bucket, the assets move to the Shell Corp, and then to us. But you have to increase the dose, babe. He needs to have the heart attack soon. The auditors are sniffing around the Q3 numbers." "I'll double it in his celebration toast," Elena said. "1 glass of champagne. That's all it will take." Sarah gripped my hand so hard her knuckles turned white. We had them. We had conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and embezzlement, all on tape. The day of the gala arrived. I dressed in the motel room. I put on my tuxedo, the one I had worn to my own wedding 40 years ago. It fit better now than it had then. The weight loss from the sickness had left me gaunt, but I looked sharp. I looked dangerous. Vance picked me up in the limo. "Are you ready?" he asked. I checked my pocket for the USB drive containing the presentation. "Let's go to the party," I said. We pulled up to the Grand Hyatt. The paparazzi were there. The red carpet was rolled out. I saw Marcus and Elena at the top of the stairs, greeting guests. Elena was wearing a blood-red dress that clung to her baby bump. She looked radiant. Marcus was in a bespoke tuxedo, shaking hands, looking every inch the young tycoon. I waited in the car until most of the guests had gone inside. Then I stepped out. I walked up the stairs. The security guard, a man named Ralph who had worked for me for 15 years, did a double take. "Mr. Blackwell," he said. "We weren't expecting you. Mr. Sterling said you were too ill to attend." I smiled at him. A wolf smile. "I'm feeling much better, Ralph. Don't tell them I'm here. I want it to be a surprise." I walked into the ballroom. It was dimly lit, filled with the chatter of 300 wealthy guests. Waiters circulated with champagne. The atmosphere was celebratory. I stood in the shadows at the back of the room. I saw Sarah near the front. She was holding a glass of water, looking pale but composed. She caught my eye and gave a barely perceptible nod. Marcus walked onto the stage. The spotlight hit him. He beamed. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice booming over the speakers, Thank you for coming to celebrate 40 years of Pacific Zenith. It is a bittersweet night. As many of you know, our founder, my father-in-law Anthony Blackwell, could not be here tonight. His health has been declining rapidly. He paused for effect. He actually looked sad. It was a masterclass in manipulation. But, he continued, I know he would want us to look to the future, to the new era of this company. Elena walked up to the stage and stood next to him, taking his hand. The supportive daughter-in-law. To the future, Marcus said, raising his glass. That was my cue. I walked down the center aisle. My cane clicked against the marble floor, a rhythmic ticking clock. The future can wait, Marcus, I shouted, my voice cutting through the silence of the room. He froze. The glass halted halfway to his lips. Elena's eyes went wide. I stepped into the light. I think we should talk about the past first. The room went deathly silent. It wasn't the polite silence of a crowd listening to a speech. It was the suffocating, heavy silence of 300 people holding their breath at once. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning and the clinking of a single fork dropping onto a plate somewhere in the back. Marcus recovered first. He was a professional chameleon, after all. He stepped down from the podium to intercept me, a look of desperate faux concern plastered onto his face. He held out his hands as if he were approaching a frightened animal. Anthony, he said, his voice dropping to a stage whisper that the microphone still picked up. You shouldn't be here. You're confused. The medication. Remember what the doctor said about the hallucinations? He turned to the crowd, offering a tight, apologetic smile. Please excuse us, everyone. My father-in-law is having an episode. It's a side effect of his treatment. We will get him some water and get him home. He reached for my arm. His grip was hard, his fingers digging into my bicep. It was a warning grip. Security, he hissed under his breath. Get him out of here. Now. 2 burly men in black suits started to move toward me from the wings. They were new hires, men Marcus had brought on, likely because they didn't know me. I didn't pull away. I didn't shout. I simply looked Marcus in the eye and spoke into the lapel microphone I had clipped onto my tuxedo jacket before I entered the room. Vance had connected it to the house system remotely. Unhand me, Marcus, I said. My voice boomed through the ballroom, clear and authoritative. It was the voice that had negotiated million-dollar contracts and stared down union strikes. It wasn't the voice of a sick man. The security guards hesitated. I am not having an episode, I continued, stepping around Marcus to stand behind the podium. I am having a moment of clarity, and I think it is time we all shared in it. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw friends I had known for 30 years. I saw investors who trusted me with their life savings. I saw the confusion turning into curiosity. Marcus tried to grab the microphone, but Sarah stepped out from the front row. She didn't look at him. She walked straight to the side of the stage and stood in front of the stairs, blocking the security team. She crossed her arms. Her face was a mask of cold fury. Let him speak, she said. Marcus looked between me and Sarah. He realized in that second that he had lost control of the room. He took a step back toward Elena, who was standing frozen, her hand clutching her stomach, her face draining of color. I signaled to the AV booth at the back of the room. Vance was in there. He had relieved the regular technician of his duties 5 minutes ago. I would like to show you a presentation, I said to the crowd. It isn't the growth strategy Marcus prepared. It is a report on the true state of our affairs. The massive screen behind me flickered. The logo of Pacific Zenith disappeared. In its place, a spreadsheet appeared. It was high contrast, easy to read. It showed the unauthorized transfers, the shell companies in the Cayman Islands, the gambling debts. This, I said, pointing to the screen, is where the profit sharing from the last 2 quarters went. It didn't go to R&D. It didn't go to the employee pension fund. It went to an account held by M. Sterling to cover losses in high-risk futures trading. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw the CFO in the third row pull out his phone, frantically typing. Marcus was shaking his head. "This is a fabrication," he shouted, his voice cracking. "He is senile. He made this up. Cut the feed." But the feed didn't cut. The slide changed. The next image was the paternity test. I had Vance blow it up so the numbers were 5 feet tall. Probability of paternity for Anthony Blackwell, 0.00%. Biological father, Marcus Sterling. The gasps were audible this time. It sounded like the air being sucked out of the room. I saw hands fly to mouths. I saw eyes dart from me to Elena, then to Marcus. The scandal was visceral. In our social circle, affairs happened, but this? This was biblical in its betrayal. I looked at Elena. She wasn't playing the victim anymore. The mask had slipped. She was staring at me with eyes so full of venom they looked black. She whispered something to Marcus and he looked at the exit signs. But I wasn't done. "And finally," I said, my voice dropping an octave, "I want to introduce you to the woman I married. You know her as Elena." The screen changed. On the left was the beautiful airbrushed engagement photo of Elena. On the right was the mugshot from Florida. The hair was different, the makeup was gone, but the eyes, the cold, predatory eyes, were identical. "Meet Catherine Pierce," I said. "Wanted in Florida for questioning regarding the suspicious death of her first husband, a man who died of a sudden heart attack, just as I was supposed to." Marcus lunged. He didn't go for me. He went for the laptop on the side table that controlled the projector, trying to smash it. But he was too slow. The audio began to play. It was the recording from the car. The sound quality was pristine, amplified by the ballroom's concert speakers. "You have to increase the dose, Elena. He is taking too long to die. I can't risk it. If he has a heart attack too soon, they might do an autopsy. Just keep him confused until he signs the power of attorney." The voice was unmistakably Marcus's. The response was unmistakably Elena's. I watched the realization wash over the crowd. This wasn't just a business dispute. This wasn't just a messy divorce. This was a murder plot, narrated by the killers themselves. The silence broke. People stood up. Some were shouting. Someone dropped a glass and it shattered, the sound like a gunshot in the tension. I looked at Marcus. He was backed against the edge of the stage. He looked small. He looked like a child caught stealing from the jar, except the jar was my life. "I am not dying, Marcus," I said into the microphone. "I have never been more alive. You are fired. You are removed from the board. And you are trespassing." I looked at Elena. "And you," I said, "you are not my wife. You are a ghost, and ghosts don't inherit estates." The double doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. Vance had timed it perfectly. He had sent the evidence to the district attorney 3 hours ago. The police didn't just send a patrol car, they sent a tactical unit. 4 officers marched down the aisle. 2 more came in from the side exits. Marcus panicked. The fight-or-flight response kicked in, and he chose flight. He jumped off the stage, shoving a waiter aside, and sprinted toward the kitchen doors. He didn't make it. My head of security, Ralph, the man Marcus had tried to order around just minutes ago, stepped into his path. Ralph didn't use a weapon. He just lowered his shoulder and checked Marcus like a linebacker. Marcus hit the floor with a thud that knocked the wind out of him. Before he could scramble up, 2 officers were on top of him, zip ties zipping shut around his wrists. Elena didn't run. She knew the game was up. She stood on the stage, her hands smoothing down her red dress. She looked at me, and then she looked at Sarah. "You were always a daddy's girl," she spat at Sarah. Sarah didn't flinch. She walked up the stairs, stood toe-to-toe with the woman who had poisoned her father and slept with her husband, and she smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was strong. "And you were always a gold digger," Sarah said quietly, "but you dug too deep." The officers led Elena away. As they walked her past me, she didn't look at me. She kept her head high, already planning her next move, already constructing her defense. But I knew it wouldn't work. Not this time. Vance had been thorough. The aftermath was a media frenzy. The gala betrayal was on the front page of every paper in the Pacific Northwest for weeks. But I didn't read them. I had lived it. I didn't need the recap. The legal process was slow but effective. Catherine Pierce, alias Elena, was denied bail due to being a flight risk and having multiple identities. She gave birth to the baby in the prison ward of the county hospital. DNA confirmed it was Marcus's child. The state took custody immediately, as there was no fit parent to claim it. Sarah and I discussed it, but we decided we could not raise that child. It was a harsh decision, perhaps, but every time we looked at it, we would see the betrayal. The child was adopted by a family in Oregon, far away from the poison of its heritage. Catherine was eventually extradited to Florida. With the new evidence of her modus operandi, the foxglove poisoning, the Florida Cold Case Unit was able to exhume her first husband's medical records and find overlooked discrepancies. She is currently serving 2 consecutive life sentences. Marcus took a plea deal. He turned on Catherine instantly, trying to paint her as the mastermind who manipulated him. It didn't save him, but it reduced his sentence. He got 15 years for attempted murder, embezzlement, and fraud. I visited him once in prison, about 6 months after the sentencing. He looked terrible. The charm was gone. He sat behind the glass, gray and shaking. "Why did you come?" he asked me. "To gloat?" "No," I said. "I came to give you this." I slid a single sheet of paper through the slot. It was the termination of his rights to any severance, stock options, or pension. "And to tell you that I forgive you," I said. He looked shocked. "You forgive me?" "Yes," I said, "because hating you takes energy, and I don't have energy to waste on things that don't matter. You are the past, Marcus. I am only interested in the future." I walked out and never looked back. Life is different now. Sarah divorced Marcus in absentia. She took back her maiden name. The ordeal hardened her, but it also sharpened her. She took over as CEO of Pacific Zenith, not because of nepotism, but because she was the only one who had proven she could spot a snake in the grass. She runs the company better than I ever did. She is tough, fair, and fiercely protective of her people. As for me, I sold my majority shares. I kept the house, but I had it remodeled. I couldn't live with the ghost of Elena in the halls. I had the kitchen gutted. I installed a professional chef's station and hired a cook who I trust implicitly. I spend my days on the water now. I bought a boat, a sturdy trawler that isn't fast, but can handle rough seas. I fish for salmon and crab. I breathe the salt air. My health returned, mostly. There is some permanent damage to my heart from the digitalis, a slight arrhythmia that reminds me every now and then of how close I came to the edge. But I view it as a scar, a reminder of the battle I survived. Sometimes, when I am out on the Sound, waiting for a bite, I think about the herbal tonic. I think about how sweet she made it taste, masking the bitterness of the poison. It is a lesson I will carry to my grave. The most dangerous things in life often come with a smile and a promise of a cure. But I am still here. My memory is sharp. My daughter is safe. And the only thing I am drinking these days is black coffee, brewed by my own hand. They tried to erase me. Instead, they wrote the final, victorious chapter of my life for me. Thank you for listening to my story. If you were in my shoes, would you have visited Marcus in prison, or would you have let him rot without a word? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of truth and justice.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales like this, hit subscribe.